Welcome to everyone who's live here in the house, and welcome to all of our viewers tuning in on HowlRound right now or in the future. Welcome to the National Institute for Directing and Ensemble Creation, which is co-organized by Pangea World Theater and Art2Action, and we are currently live streaming with the help of HowlRound from Dakota lands. As always, the Institute uplifts the work of Black, Indigenous, and artists of color, particularly directors, women directors, and LGBTQ2+, Two-Spirit, and more. Directors working in the creation of original contemporary work, working through devised processes or ensemble processes or even community-based processes in the creation of new work. And so we have always been investigating what is the role of the director in this context? How is it different from other forms of theater making? And this year in particular, we've been so excited to have some guest designers join that conversation. So we can specifically investigate what does director-designer collaboration look like in that context? In the context of communities of color, queer-led projects, women-led projects, and in the creation of original contemporary work. So I'm your moderator today. Hello. I get to sit with all these beautiful people that you'll meet in just a moment. And my name is Andrea Assaf. I'm the Artistic and Executive Director of Art2Action, which is based in Tampa, Florida, the ancestral and unceded lands of the Seminole, Muskogee, Miccosukee, and Tocobaga peoples. And I'm a theater director, playwright, and performer. And so very excited about this special focus for our 2025 Institute on director designers in conversation. So this year's live stream in partnership with HowlRound is a kind of roundtable. We have some prompt questions, but we're very much going to go with the flow and have a real discussion about what it means to work in interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary ways in the context that we work in. So you might have seen the bios of these wonderful people while you were waiting for us to go live. You can also find them on the HowlRound webpage, and we encourage you to read their bios in full and learn more about all the artists. But we're gonna introduce ourselves in a more conversational way, really by discipline and maybe how we think of ourselves as theater makers, which may or may not fit into the disciplines that are often prescribed to us. So at the Institute, we like to honor the practice of First Peoples First. So first, I will invite DeLanna to introduce herself. Welcome.
Osio, the Dawa Doan, the Lanage, the Ann, Carol, Tune Studi Kaywood, Chichalagi, Oklahoma. Hi everyone, my name is DeLanna Studi. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Cherokee Nation from Oklahoma. Oklahoma is where my people were purposely removed. And when we arrived in Oklahoma, we displaced the Caddo, the Kickapoo, the Osage, and the Oceti-Sakowin. I am the Artistic Director of Native Voices, and I'm also the chair of the SAG-AFTRA National Native Americans Committee, and I've been holding that position since 2007. And both of those places are located on the ancestral lands of the Gabrielino Tongva. I am also a playwright, an actor, a director, a producer, in whatever space I can feel.
All the things.
I'm Charlotte Brathwaite. Nice to be here with all of you. I'm based between New York, the unceded lands of the Lenape people, and also in Dakar, Senegal, where a lot of people are.
Hola a todos, a todes. Mi nombre es Dora Arreola. Pues muchas gracias por la invitación a esta mesa redonda. Es un placer estar aquí. Soy directora escénica, coreógrafa, performer, originalmente de México. Actualmente vivo en Tampa, donde soy profesora de teatro en la Universidad del Sur de Florida.
Gracias, Dora. And also want to name Artistic Director of Mujeres en Ritual Danza Teatro. Gracias.
Hello, I'm Izumi Ashizawa. and I am a performance artist, director, designer, and also devising performance artist. And I am based in Queens, New York, land of Karnataka people. And I also based in Tokyo, Japan. I'm originally from Japan.
So as we move into introducing some of the folks who also identify as designers, we're going to get a little bit of a visual taste, tiny, tiny little taste of their work so that you can have a visual reference as they're introducing themselves. So I think we might want to see a little bit of Izumi's design work, because she, when I was inviting folks to this panel, I said, hey, Izumi, do you have a designer that you would like to invite? Because I had noticed that the design in her work is striking. And she's like, I design my own work. And I was like, yes, okay. So Izumi is our bridge person in this conversation, although everybody, as you can already tell, is very interdisciplinary in the way they approach the work. So that's me vamping while we move to Troy, and I get to see some of his images as well as he sees.
Hi, everyone. I'm Troy Hourie. I am a member of the Métis Nation of Ontario. I'm based in Aurora, Ontario, traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and Chippewa, Georgina Island. I am a scenographer, a performance installation artist, and a director.
Hello, my name is Jeff Becker. I come from Bolbancha, New Orleans, the land of the Chinimacha, Homa, and many other nations. And I am a director, designer, mostly a collaborative artist. I'm very excited to be part of this panel.
Hi, everyone. My name is Joan Osato. I come from the unceded territories of the Ramaytush Boni, otherwise known as the San Francisco Bay Area. And in this conversation, I am in the role of designer. And so I do mostly projection, video design, and other sorts of kind of visual design for theater and installation.
I love how, like, Joni's like the audition. Today I am playing the role of designer. Because all of these folks also direct and wear multiple hats and play multiple roles in the process of creating original work. So I want to definitely acknowledge that. Okay, so we have some prompts. We've been, for folks viewing online, we have been engaged in workshops and conversations about design and the director-designer relationship already since yesterday. So there are some continuing conversations, there's some new conversations, there's some prompts, but actually I'm going to facilitate, just like supporting where the conversation needs to go. And we just had lunch, and one of the things that came up right away is that Charlotte asked the question when I said we want to talk about director and designer collaborations, like, can we get on the same page about what do we mean by collaboration? So Charlotte, would you like to kick us off with some thoughts about what does collaboration mean to you?
Yeah. Thank you for that. So I think I forgot to say that I'm an artist and a director. So I do think about, from the beginning of whenever the piece, whatever the spark is that makes me want to work with somebody on a piece, there's an invitation, right? So I think like collaboration has a lot to do with like an invitation. And as I was just discussing with Stephanie, I think it's also like you're hosting, right? So you want to make sure like, you invite someone to your house, you want to make sure there's food, there's drink. So I guess I see my role in the collaboration as someone who tries to make a space feel open, a space that realizes that there's expertise coming from many different ways, right? So I try not to think of my role as a director as a hierarchical role, but the role of, as you're doing, Andrea, right? Like, how do we spark the conversation so that the conversation can produce something that is more than any one of us can make on our own? I'll leave it at there for now, but there's more to say, but I would love to hear what the rest of you have to say.
Anyone want to jump in on that? What is collaboration for you?
Okay, I was going to say for Native Voices, collaboration is creating community and also building family. it's very important that whatever process we're doing, whatever story we are telling, we go to the community that the story is about, and we get permission from their elders. And we also find someone that will act as a consultant. Even when I was doing a piece about the Cherokee people, I made a point of going to tribal council and getting permission from the Eastern Band of Cherokee, which is not my tribe, just to show respect, and also the fact that I wanted to tell the story in a good way. And so, and one of the ways we do that is we always have food. We always have our Blue Sky Fund, which is extra money in case our artists need it for maybe they're having a hard time getting to rehearsal on time and they need bus fare, or they need gas money, or maybe they can't find a babysitter. It's very family friendly, also very pet friendly. You know, we want to make sure that whenever we create a piece of work, it represents our community, and access should never be a barrier. So that's one of the ways that we go about it. And Troy will tell you the way we work is it's very playwright focused. So we want to make sure that the playwright gets to tell the best story they can. We encourage them to dream bigger, but we also know for a lot of Native theater artists, unfortunately, Native Voices is the one time they will get their show produced, because a lot of theaters aren't doing Native theater. And so we want to make sure if this is their one chance, it's the best product we can create for them. But the playwright's involved in every step of the decision making.
I think I agree with this idea of community, and as I've become more involved in Indigenous storytelling through theater, the idea of community, but as a place of learning and being open to learn from each other and to really help draw out the best in each other and raise everybody to the levels that they possibly can. So I strongly believe in multi-generational and mentorship and sharing of ideas, and no idea, like in a good collaboration, you don't know where the idea came from. You know, it's a shared room that's safe and yeah. I think that's...
Just want to add to all these definitions of collaboration, they need to play together. They need to continue playing. And I just want to add that to, of course, the community, family, and long-term relationship. But the idea of create a space to play together, I will say that I have that hungering since very little. So I don't know exactly when that happens. I become that professional artist, but because my need of being in community is that to create those spaces to play together and to create.
And I would add too that I agree very much with the community aspect of it, because it is a collaboration with the community, but also with the entire artistic team and the producer team, and everybody who's involved in the production is really important. And I think it's often forgotten that you don't know where the idea comes from. Sometimes it comes from the stage manager, sometimes it comes from the producer, but it's all in the room and you're all working together to create this beautiful thing. So it's really important to recognize that your community is larger than you might think.
And also the place where alchemy happen, magic happen. So you put just one seed and then like hundreds of plants start to grow. That's the place of a wonderful collaboration.
Joan, do you want to add?
I'm gonna say something. There's also this thing about intentional community design, which is like a lot of the times when I've been involved in theater projects, out of those projects come grow these other things, where an entire community may actually construct a container for interaction and for health, for well-being, for music or art to happen, like in terms of like public space. And so that's like reclaiming public space as a place of ritual and a place of culture. So that's the way I think about designing. Also, whether it's in a theater, whether it's in a park.
That's beautiful. I'm just going to share back some things I heard that have been bubbling up in many of our conversations and process throughout the Institute. Invitation, permission, hosting, community, mutual learning, building a shared room, play, alchemy, magic, planting, intentionality, reclaiming ritual and culture. So those are all some seeds that have been threading. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to also add the idea of intimacy. I think, especially in this time when there's so much division happening or being sold in the status quo, like it's a really special thing that, you know, when you start a collaboration or when a collaboration is cooking or growing, as you say, there's like a deep intimacy, and that's like the first level of intimacy. And then later you're going to add audience, more collaborators, whatever. But that's like just the first ground zero of really developing a closeness together that I think is, you know, in the best situations, it's unmatched, right? You choose to like have those challenging conversations together. You choose to get messy together. You choose to, you know, share the softest parts of yourself together. You know, and so in a way, the collaboration is for me very much like the way I want to live in the world. And so like the, you know, the creative space is like the first kind of mock-up of that, you know, so to speak.
Literally on the walk over here, DeLanna and I were just talking about like how much work it is, like what work it is really to create and hold a container or create a safe space when the world around us is on fire, right? And like how much energy that takes, how much commitment, how much intentionality, right? To create the world that we want to live in, even if it's only for one process, one production, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, one run, you know, it is, we are world building. We're in that way, right? So I'm going to encourage us because throughout Charlotte's been encouraging us to like have the hard conversation. So I'm just going to open that door and see if we want to go through it at any point. But the next question I want to ask is to kind of turn toward the folks who are playing the role of designer today in the conversation. What do you need from directors? Like when you start that collaboration process, what are you looking for? What's going to spark your creativity or make it a good process for you?
For me, it's like I feel like when I'm working with a director and there's a pre-existing piece and it's not a devised piece, a piece that we're creating from the beginning, I feel like my role is to help the director achieve the dream, see what's in there. I ask questions to see what's in their head so I can help realize what they see. And through that, like I'm able to put what I feel like the direction should go. But I really, really want to try to support a director's vision when I'm working in that kind of role. In a more devised process, the director is not often decided at that point. So it's a different process.
I'm usually working with like ensembles, and continuously working with the same ensembles, hopefully like again and again and again, because I think the relationship is really key. Like even if it's like a somewhat new director who's coming out of an ensemble, right, who hasn't directed before, it's really important that at least the kind of best or the greatest experiences I've had are when you're like really aligned in terms of like your emphasis on like what is the urgency around the story, like is this story for us? Is it going to be for us in the room? And then like just having that as a foundation of where you're working from. So that's from the director, you know, ideally it's about like alignment. And it's about also the ability to bring the collaborators into the room really early and not kind of leave it as an afterthought or we're all siloed into our own little things. Because we're creating something together and no one thing or element of design can work without the other pieces in there, without the actors, without the dramaturg, without the director, without the other designers.
I think that for me, the most important thing is to have an understanding of what are the most important stories that need to be told within, whether it's devised or it's a script that is written beforehand, you need to know what the beats are. Like, how do we achieve from this point to this point to this point, and how are we moving people through space? What kinds of histories are there that we have to acknowledge? And then just the sense of trust. Because then, for me, I like to listen to a director talk about a piece. What are their goals? What is their vision? And I personally just jot down words that really highlight for me. And then that's what I base my research on. And so it's a give and take. So it's this understanding that they come to us, we go back, and it just becomes this sharing process.
It's just another element of the storytelling, you know, just like the text, how does the design help tell the story you're trying to tell? And what are the important aspects of it?
I'm gonna flip it over to the directors to continue this, but also add how do you actually communicate your vision when you're entering a new conversation with a designer or a set of collaborators? Like, how do you actually help them get that information that they need to run with it?
Well, for me, it's not uncommon that I send the designers on the native boot camp circuit. So it's like I put them in contact with elders. I make them go visit tribal museums. I literally, like, whenever we're working on Cherokee projects, I make them go to North Carolina. I pay for it. I send them to North Carolina. They meet with elders. They go to the village. You know, I try to find a way to get them immersed in the culture so they can learn about it. Even if they happen to be Cherokee, I don't want them to feel like they have to come in and be the ambassador of all things Cherokee. It's a rare luxury we get to show up and just be an artist.
Yeah.
Because usually we have to show up and be the artist, the advocate, and also know everything about that community. And it's not fair. And I want to make sure that they have the best experience possible. So when Troy came on board with, we did Antigone, which was a Nez Perce adaptation of Antigone. We put him in contact with the playwright Beth Piato. Beth was working with some elders from her tribe. We talked about the colors that we use, the beading patterns, the way we're going to tell the story, the importance of the story, why the story was so divisive in that community, especially with the Nez Perce and the Cayuse. And then when we went to Jiva to do Pure Native, we worked with a community called Ganondagan. And we did, and this is a relationship that Jiva Theater has been building for the past, almost 2 decades, I believe. And I've been working with Ganondagan for 5 years now. And it's how do we get back to the community? What are the issues they really want us to unpack? And how can we paint a picture of their community that's truthful, but also can find the joy in the trauma and also the humor. We always try to infuse everything we do with humor. Indians are really funny people, but no one ever sees that. They're very stoic, and that's not true. And so we try to find ways to infuse everything we do with that. And then my favorite thing that we do is in our lobbies, we open it up and we actually showcase other local artists. You know, it's not fair to have just one Indian on stage. You know, we want to make sure we let people know that the native people of that place are still here and they have art and they are thriving, and you should go out and meet them and find ways to work with them. We try to help create that relationship between our audience and the community because for a lot of our native artists, when we get to go someplace that's not a native theater to do our plays, it's very transactional. It's not about really building that relationship. So how do we model the building of relationships?
Yeah. Supporting what she said with Jiva, we were very fortunate that even with the set itself, we were able to commission artists to come in and create work based on the play that I integrated into the design, and had lots of conversations about what they liked and what they didn't and what I should change. And it was really a wonderful learning experience. So thank you.
Other folks from the director point of view, how do you communicate your vision?
I guess I would just say that, especially at the beginning of the process, I just try with everyone just to enliven their senses. So that might mean taking a trip. That might mean sitting in the grass. I don't know, whatever the project is. It's just I really feel like there's many ways and depending on who the people are in the room, because that's the other thing. I just want to say that, like, I think of each collaboration as a unique constellation of people who've been gathered at a specific moment in time and place to do something that can't be done at any other time. So it's like, it's so specific to who I'm dealing with, what our relationship has been. But I think that, having like a shared taste of where we're going, not particularly how we're going to get there. Because I'm like, that's why I said the thing about expertise, because I feel like sometimes like I got to get out of the way in order for that person to kind of fully be in their creative juice. And I guess I would also say that, in my own experience, I realized that, theater really changed my life. Like, I'm a La Mama baby, and I think that experience of being there and watching so many different kinds of collaborations across language, across culture, across skill set, across age. I mean, it's just I think it really inspired the way that I want to work, and then hold like each experience and each project as something unique. And that could potentially change somebody's life. So to try to like stay open for that and not be too prescriptive about, okay, well, this is what's going to happen every time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I feel like one of the unique things about creating original work through a devised or ensemble-based process is that the director is also leading the process, creating the process, right? It's not simply replicating a process that already exists. And in that way, every constellation is different. You might have the same toolbox that you carry into the job, but the how, or if it evolves organically and through collaboration, it might be different every time, right? Because we're not just staging a thing, we're creating the entire journey. Yeah. Dora or Izumi, you want to say, how do you communicate? Yeah.
Well, I have like different lines, I would say, of working with the designers. One of them is, I will do the story very short, but there is this lighting designer in Mexico. His name is Arreola, and I really admire this designer. Well, I will do the story short. It's my brother. So, Guadalupe Arreola is a professional designer in Tijuana, and he's collaborating with a lot of directors in Mexico, but we have been playing since little. We do theater together, so we know each other so good, so well, that we understand each other in a level of dreams, the level of DNA up to that level. So we have a certain way of communicating as each other. But what I will see his lighting designing my device work with Mujeres en Ritual since 25 years ago, until this present, that I will do the work of choreographing and ensemble work with my company, but he will come and he will elevate the thing and then create the relationship of what is here to the audience. So there was this, he's a magician. Basically, I need a magician to do that. And then he will ask me and say, Dora, do you want them in this moment to be floating? Like floating? And I was like, yes. But because, floating because he understands what is going on in my dreams, right? That this moment should be suspended, and the audience should be like going there in this moment and feeling and be with what is happening in there, right? So my other line of work is when I work with a new designer. Can be set designer. I started with the set designer. I will put the example. He is not a set designer, so when I work with a set designer, I'm hoping that he will be my brother too, so we can have the same connection, like deep connection, like historical connection, ancestral connection, right? So what I do is that I take the script and of course I analyze it and I all this process, research, same thing, the designers, all my other collaborators, right? And then I go to sleep and with the material, if I have already a little script or a poem, to sleep and to intentionally to have a dream. I try to create a process to dream, to have a dream, and then from the dream, it sounds strange, but I'm able to see the whole material, I would say play, represented in an image, an object. And if I can get the object, I bring the object to the video. And I will say, this is the place here. And they go and find out their own connection or to bring a new object if they find it in their dreams. So I'm talking to the level of the dreams. That I'm trying to dig in to find that poetic aspect of what I am trying to what I'm seeing, because I'm not a fast director, I'm a slow director. So I have the need to go inside me into my memories and blood and DNA, all the things to come up with something to inspire, something to instigate or be open to change it. So
thank you, Dora. I'm going to do a little plug here to say that during the pandemic, we did a series of online classes with some of the directors involved in the Institute. And there is on HowlRound a whole session of Dora talking about this process of how to create a concept that will then be used to find that central image that will then be used to communicate with the design team. So I encourage you to check that out on HowlRound. And now I'm going to ask Izumi a specific question. So Izumi, if you're a director and you're also designing some of the elements in your work, where do you start? Like, how does that process unfold? How do you live in both brains and move between them?
Right. So I thought about it and I categorized it, and there are 5 examples. So it's morphing, and it's almost like performing. It's like actors performing different roles. It's the same way that sometimes, one example is, conventional way text. I write text, and that text inform the formula. And then it becomes design, and then that informs the material. So for instance, the Blue Rocks is the performance that I made on no performance. It's, the style of Japanese no theater written in a no form. But the theme is a Greek mythology of a Jason and a crashing rock. So the material of the costume, it was in the picture. Everything was I made ceramic pieces.
Is this the one?
This is the
Yeah,
one.
great.
So the costume and the mask was also ceramic made. Style of the mask was based on Japanese Hanya mask, but the material. So that text concept inform the design. That's first example. Second one is no text, but the idea concept and also the process inform the design, and the process became design, and then design informed the text. So I designed first, and then I wrote the text after. So that's the second one. This is the middle example. This is the performance called Zahak. I made it in Iran. So there's a social and dress code in a society, right, in the country. So that informed how to dress women and I'm dressing such a way that everything is covered, but it's incorporating to design, and then the text came later. And another example is that yes, so the third one, this one is the movement, gesture, and the playing in the rehearsal. So that movement and choreography inform the design. And this one is, the costume part was designed by myself, but there was a scenic prop designer, that's a separate J.D. Madison designed the set, but it became such a way of a collaboration that the set and costume became almost one. There was no borderline. So, but that came from the rehearsal of a choreography and movement and gesture. And then the last example is the next one is the map one. So this is the current show that I'm working on. It's a ritual and parade happening in Japan in September, based on the Japanese festive parade. I created the concept and first made the storyboard, but in a scroll painting way. So you see this painting doesn't fit in my room, so it's just going over. And then start to create map. So the storyline based on the space, the road, and which part of the road we are going to perform this way. And it's a huge puppet show, and the puppet transform on the way. So as the puppet walk, it transformed. So that, the transformation of a storyboard was based on, that concept of ritual and the location.
Oh, thank you for those examples. That's awesome that we get to see it and hear you talk about it. But I want to then just kind of open the conversation to all of these elements that we're talking about, movement and text and image and puppet and object, all of these elements. Where do you all start in your process? Or it might be different in different projects, but when you're entering into these collaborative processes, is it always text or is it something else that might catalyze where do you begin? What element leads, as Charlotte said yesterday? What element leads for you?
What movement?
Movement.
Movement, and most of the time. Movement, of course, text sometimes. And
You're looking at me? I would say a question. I usually have a question about something, and could be a place, right? Be talking about a place, so I have a question about that place. I have a question about, it could be a play, could be a question about a play, could be movement. My work is not really, I don't just work in theater. I work in a lot of different mediums, so I feel like, and I work with a lot of different artists. I work with designers, I work with visual artists, I work with photographers, I work with journalists, whatever, actors. And so I find that, and the projects look really different. But I think the idea of art being a place where we can ask questions and dive into those questions, and then let those questions change and shift and relate to the world and relate to us also as we change and shift. I think that's for me like a basic place to start.
Well, I can talk just briefly about this also leads to something that we might talk about later, but recently I worked on Pure Native with DeLanna, and it was written by Vicky Ramirez, and the director Randy Reinholz and I flew to Jiva to have our first meetings, and we had started with the text, but there was this, we had not worked together before. So this was a new experience, but what was incredible was that we walked into the space, and when you read a text, I'll give that example, that when you read a text, sometimes there's something that just viscerally hits you as the important thing. And in an indigenous community like the one that was in this piece, it was about the community, and it was about water is life, the river. It was about it was pure native. It was all about a member of the community coming back and wanting to bring a water factory to the territory, and so we connected on that idea. And within 3 hours, he and I had done little sketches and had the idea and presented to Jiva, and that idea was what was on stage. Sometimes it comes that easy when there's simpatico, even with a stranger. Other times, like my auditorio, which there was a photo of up there, it comes from imagination. It comes from childhood imagination, dreaming. So I'm a kind of creepy person. So I really love like.
Not indigenous.
Yeah, and so I love childhood fascination with certain things, and I collect toys and creepy things. So that bit built to work, and it was all devised out of moments from storytelling that I thought were important to tell. So.
A large majority of my work over the last couple decades has been about the environment, and a lot of the work has been staged outside, where the audience moves through the landscape to different areas of performance. So a lot of times the design starts with where we're working, but I feel like I've been telling a long story over the last 20 years. Each show is like another chapter. So I start like, what is the question of this chapter? What are we talking about now? What is important here? So and I've been fortunate to work with a lot of the same people over this long novel we're writing, and it's I feel fortunate that I can keep working, coming back to the same ideas and finding new ways into them, new ways to kind of explore deeper and go deeper into the work. So that is like almost a separate area of design for me. But I feel I really like to have that question and have the work in the world I'm talking about.
In terms of like working with directors, and I'm usually also working with a playwright a long period out. So one of the things is time. Time is very important, and because when you're really seeing a work evolve from conversations and meetings that you're having with the playwright, like literally I've seen things rise like from one day to the next, and doing table work, and that all is a very collaborative kind of conversation because actors are in the room, designers are in the room, the playwright, the director. So that's usually like the beginning point. Like once we get into like actual production, like I love working with directors. We've had these conversations. We're also in conversations as a whole with all of the other designers, so that there's like this shared kind of language the visual language, the like whatever emotional language of the play, where we all are kind of understanding like what parts of that we're contributing when we're stepping forward and when we're stepping back. And this matters a lot, like in terms of the confines of inside of like a tight space of a theater, right? And whereas other places like outdoors, there's a little bit more space for randomness and like impromptu, this happening, stuff going completely wrong, although that happens inside of the confines of the theater, and just roll with it. And there are happy accidents that happen also, like in that process. I love that when that happens. But yeah, having those like conversations and like shared kind of language. And sometimes the director has like a very, very clear vision, right? And where you come in as a designer is not only trying to support that, but bringing your own like lens and perceptions into that. And a lot of the times it's just like, yeah, like I know that you had this looking like this, and what about this? Can I show you what I come up with, right? And so and those are the types of conversations that I love having during production.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to add on what leads or say anything further? Dora, what are you going to say?
No, I think that I didn't understand the question. I thought it would be like,
Oh,
right?
no, go ahead.
I was telling you that I have 25 years working with this company in Tijuana, Baja California. It's the border of Mexico and United States. So my work is pretty, with this company is geographical. It's the corner of Mexico in Latin America. Mm-hmm. And actually my family, I grew up there. Mm-hmm. I live there. The border, the fence is in my backyard, basically. So we have those questions about the experience of women at the border of Mexico and United States since 20 years ago. And that questions that we have in the beginning, it just it's not the same. I would say it gets more and more complex. And then, so we continue asking us those questions about the experience that we have at the border of Mexico and United States. And that is, and sometimes we start the project and we know that it's about the geographic, the situation that is happening there. So we know that we have to go to shelters and to refugees to start. If they are asking us to go, or we share experience with knowledge and wisdom with the refugees that are right to Tijuana and start with work there.
Thank you. I just want to say back some of the things that we just heard, because we were talking this morning about how, there's a certain kind of way of working that is considered mainstream in the United States, or that is expected when you enter certain kinds of institutions in our field. And what we just heard was like totally different from that. And what we discover through the process of the Institute and gathering in this way is that there are so many of us working in alternative ways, alternative to that particular system in a capitalist society, right? Which does not represent the global majority. We were talking about that this morning. And so here's some of the things I heard, like, yes, the process might start with the text, but it also might start with movement, ritual, image, story, a question, the land itself, geography, which also includes political geography, right? Childhood memory, dreaming, immersion in a context or a community, time together in relationship, shared language, or even an object. All of those are places to begin a process that have nothing to do with a table read. Right? And how many of us are exploring and creating in that way? It's really important for us to articulate. So I know we're moving toward the end of our time, and there's one prompt that we all find juicy and want to get to, and that you actually hinted at when you said perception. Because I asked this question of the group about aesthetics, and some folks are immediately like, ooh, that word, crunch, that doesn't sit right, and why? And we started having a conversation about that at lunch, and what do we really mean? So I'm going to open it with like context, and then allow us to investigate that word as well. But the context that I want to say, that I alluded to at the beginning, is that we are in the moment of live streaming this conversation. We are in so many crises at once in the United States and globally, from the ice raids and resistance that is happening in Los Angeles and California, to the Twin Cities, to Boston, right? To the ongoing genocide in Palestine, to the rise of authoritarianism all over the world. So many crises, right? The world's on fire all around us. And so why are we sitting here talking about aesthetics and design and how, and why is it important? So my question is, the question that I came in with is, why is it important to have these conversations even now or especially now? And then that led us to like, well, what do we even really mean by aesthetics? And maybe, Izumi, you could share what you said about you digging into that word.
Right. So we were discussing, while we were discussing aesthetics yesterday, I had really unsettling feeling about it. And then so geek that I am, I went to the linguistic source of aesthetics and then found out that the original meaning is Greek term, and then the original meaning was perception or source of perception. And later, in 18th century, 19th century, the philosopher in Germany and in the French, they changed it to taste of perception. So then now what we know is taste based on that. So I felt that the original term really echoed what I feel. And so design is a perception, and so as performance, and it's one element. How to see, how to being perceived. That's the origin. So, and then I thought that yes, in this condition, sometimes maybe not intentionally not showing design, not doing design can be also a statement.
Yes.
And so that's another thing that yesterday I showed you the example of kurogomi, and seemingly no design yet. I'm just adding touches of fabric from inside. So it's not visible, but the statement is from inside enforcing. So that can be also considered as design, and in this condition.
So this question then, like flipping that word, is like, why do we need to keep talking about perception as artists of color, as queer and trans folks, as women in leadership, right? Why do we need to why is it important now? I hear you saying like, it might be what you perceive from the outside, but it also might just be an intentional practice, right? So why, in times of crisis, why do aesthetics or perception or our practices matter? Floor is open.
Also, the question of aesthetics and kind of like, like having that reaction to that word. It's like, what is your aesthetic? Is kind of like just a weird place to come at things, because but when we talk about perception and the perception of how we operate in this world, we operate kind of like at the as kind of like the bridge between culturally where we come from, culturally what our dreams are for the future, right? We all represent are in families and communities that are probably grounded pretty much like in like physical land and space, right? And so none of that like leaves when you step into a room to enact, some portion of quote unquote design, right? And because these stories are coming from like a very culturally grounded space, these stories are for people who, are a part of you, right? And I think that's important because, like when we're talking about these times, it's like, one, we're all people of storytellers. Two, those stories are important, and it's also important to historicize what we go through. Yeah. Like we are in a line of history, and not to forget that. The other thing also is that culture, frankly moves people like in a different way than like hearing the news feeds and what politicians are saying, how and culture moves faster than politics. You know, so if you want to be on the cutting edge of and keep, what is important to us, like up front and center, culture is like the way, is kind of like a way to do it, which is kind of like at the front. Yeah.
So I think of it in terms of indigenizing theater, because there's a structure that's been forced upon us that was created without us in mind. And for most of us in this room, our stories predate that structure. And how do we actively reclaim the way we originally told stories? And so that's one of the reasons why I really love studying different types of dramaturgy, how different cultures tell stories. And to me, stories are medicine, stories are rebellion, stories are an act of sovereignty. And, in this, the way whenever we get up and tell a story, we are sharing a very unique way about our people, and we are keeping our way of storytelling alive. And if you are in this country, and any colonized country, that way has been so, they've been trying to press that down as much as possible. They've tried to eliminate us on so many fronts and have failed. We are still here, and our stories remain. And so that's how I always, that's when I think of, the aesthetics is like, it's a way of preserving our unique way of telling stories, and also acknowledging all the beautifully diverse ways that we tell them.
There's a term in Islam called al-Khaib. Forgive me if my pronunciation isn't good, but al-Khaib is about the power of the unseen. And I think when I think of perception, so many communities under attack have had to trust in the power of the thing that is unseen, but is felt, and that is kind of known in some kind of recess in the mind and the imagination. And so in this conversation of design, I kind of want to also just bring forward the idea that for me, no matter how much set, how much light, how much video, how much costume, at the end of the day, the imagination is the most amazing designer. And that is the thing that is transportive. And that is the thing that I feel as a director, as a collaborator, as someone who has made their life trying to connect to the thing that is unseen, but the thing that is known, because the thing that is seen is pretty terrible. I have to delete my Instagram again because I've noticed that I've started kind of doom scrolling in the morning. And so there's a way of I need to know what's going on in the world, but I also have to reconnect to the thing that I know to be true. And so I try to do that in collaborative processes and to try to think of how do we connect to the power that we know that maybe we can't even speak about, but comes out, maybe for you when you create your video, or for you when you create your dance, or you know what I mean? It's that thing that is unspoken. And I think we have to remember that power in each of us.
And I would say, and thank you both. And what I want to see what I want to see and how I want to, who is representing who is important for us aesthetics. And talking about my project, Mujeres en Rituales, women and LGBTQ plus communities, and indigenous women. So I think that is something and a feminist perspective, a queer perspective of that particular story that I think is important for this particular time and for all, I would say for a long time. But if we're talking about this moment, I think is when we need to be more intentional, more bold about those intentions.
I think I would also say that doing this kind of work means that representing and being seen, and that the collective voice in a hope for connection with the other. There is an otherness that who's the other. And how do we find those connections? That's why I've come back to using childhood. You know, everyone, no matter where you're from, has experiences where you thought of things before ideas formed, the simplicity of things. And so that's why I reach for dreams and those kinds of experiences. And then when you add culture on top of that, you're getting this complex thing that maybe will connect with that other person that isn't the same with you.
We're coming toward the hour, but I want to ask Jeff and Izumi if they want to add anything on this.
I mean, I think that nothing exists independently. Like an idea comes up, it's not your idea. It comes from generations of ideas. And in the work that we create within a context. The work that I create, work that you create, we're all kind of part of a bigger story, I think, you know? And I think it's important to recognize that, like, these aesthetics or what we've inherited, or, you know, it connects us with the past, it gives us context for the present, and it's kind of a pathway into the future. And I think what we're doing on that line is passing it on to the future. So it's very important what we're doing now, because we're part of a big story altogether. And that story is part of what we carry to the future. And I think what we do is important work. And we have to remember that. And sometimes you think, when you ask the question, like, with all what's going on in the world, like, should I be doing more? Is this a waste of my time? Should I be doing something more? But I think what we're doing is important work. I think we do all question it. But when we have panels like this and these convenings like this, it reminds me that I'm part of a really important community in the world, and proud to be part of it.
Yes, well, in this condition, perhaps the design can be also a visual cue, and also visual language that you may not be able to say something verbally, but you can say it visually, and it's a hidden code, perhaps, through design. You can say yes verbally, and then but you show it no visually. That's the power of design. And then combining with performer, directing, and all the elements together with that visual, it really creates juxtaposition and irony and accent.
Thank you. I'm going to do this one more time and say back some words that we just heard. In the why is the work important? Culture, representation, context, connection, reclaiming, presence, historicity, medicine, sovereignty, perseverance, unspoken or hidden codes, and the power of the unseen. Thank you to all of these amazing panelists and artists. Y'all can make some noise. I don't know if the live stream microphone can hear that, but that was a joyful noise. Thank you so much. Please look up, follow, research, learn about these amazing artists on the panel. And if you want to know more about the National Institute for Directing and Ensemble Creation, please follow Pangea World Theater, Art2Action online. Check out the other HowlRound sessions that are online. During the pandemic, we created a whole lot of them, and a lot of fantastic, amazing artists, including some artists who are now ancestors, are archived there. So please do visit. And stay tuned for the release of the forthcoming book, The Fire in the Center, Directors on Directing and Ensemble Creation, forthcoming from Routledge. And we hope we will see you again soon. Thank you.